within just 1 week, both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin came to China. China-US relations, we cannot go back. There's no way that we could go back, but we could start over.
China-Russia relations are at their highest level in history. And
it's a very, asymmetric warfare. And they're using so many drones, cheap drones, and you have to, the defensive missiles cost millions.
Probably the United States will win, but at what cost? I mean, they will win, but they will be completely bankrupt.
So this is episode 1, which means if you're watching it right now, you are technically an early supporter. Like if this channel, if this podcast somehow becomes huge one day, you are able to say, okay, I was here before they even figure out the lighting. Welcome to Power and Perspective. I'm Abby from China, and I'm doing this with Leo.
Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Leonardo, and here we'll talk about geopolitics in a simple and clear way. We'll look at what is happening around the world, why it matters, and how it can affect the future. So, if you like international politics, world news, history, and global affairs, this channel is for you. Again, thank you for being here and welcome.
Yep, and this week honestly gave us the perfect first topic because literally within just 1 week, both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin came to China. And depending on where you live, that fact can mean completely different things. In some places, people see it as diplomacy, and in others, it feels like a signal that global balance is shifting. But online here in China, people weren't just talking about politics. They were talking about those little moments like Putin taking off his jacket after landing in Beijing, or Donald Trump going back to America and still talking about how beautiful the Great Wall of People was. So I think those tiny details somehow became part of a much bigger conversation. What kind of world are we moving into right now?
Yeah, and so today we are going to discuss Trump's visit to China. It was a global earthquake. Also, we are going to talk about Putin's visits and China-Russia relations, why Russia and China are aligning, and lastly, we are going to discuss the Iranian situation.
Yeah, so a lot to cover today. Now let's start with Trump, because honestly, I think a lot of people expected this visit to be tense because, the media narratives for years has been tariffs, rivalry, decoupling, technology wars. So people almost forgot that, diplomacy can also look quite warm. And, actually during the meeting between Trump and our President Xi, he literally said to President Xi that it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever. So regardless of whether people see that as strategy or diplomacy or personality, it surprised a lot of people. It surprised me as well.
Yes, actually, the main result of this meeting was not the grand new alliance. This is something that people must understand. Of course, you could see that the chemistry between Xi Jinping and Trump was great. They had a good meeting. They said positive things about each other. It is good that America and China, they have this kind of diplomacy. It's good that people are talking, respecting each other. And someone like Trump, someone that has a very strong personality. But at the same time, you have to understand that both sides spoke about building a constructive relationship of strategic stability. So the meaning is that they want to keep competition, but under control. And they want to avoid the relationship turning into an open confrontation. So China described this as the main political understanding of the summit. The White House said both leaders agreed to pursue strategic stability based on fairness and reciprocity. I think that was great. However, you could see that both countries are talking to each other, are trying to find a common ground. I can see good sides from both sides. You have to understand that Trump is a faction in America that wants good relations with both Russia and China. Of course, regarding China, they can be competitors economically. As you can see nowadays, people day by day are using more yuan. Um, Russia, they trade with China in yuan. You can see that yuan is becoming day by day more popular, more used in international transactions.
The RMB.
Yes, I mean, as you know it popularly,
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I am Brazilian.
Mm-hmm.
I support BRICS.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about creating a new currency, BRICS currency, but I think it's more viable if you start using more uh, yuan in international trade. I know it's RMB. I'm just talking about yuan so people can
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so this is the main challenge of this new relationship is that okay, politically they are talking to each other diplomatically. You could see gestures of goodwill. Both China and America are the main players economically in the world. It is good for the world that both countries are talking to each other, but there is still some differences between them that will be very hard to reconcile.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
I think.
also, geopolitically, they discuss Iran, Ukraine, North Korea, the Middle East, and Taiwan too. Um, on Iran, the US side claimed that agree that Iran must not obtain a nuclear weapon
Mm-hmm.
because it will be a very unstable world. If every country has nuclear weapons, it will be harder to control. And mainly, some countries they can fall into anarchy, can be a regime change. We don't know which actors could take power of this country. So it's good when nuclear weapons are under sane minds control, like leaders that are rational, that are not crazy, that are not too ideological. So
Mm-hmm.
this is something good. Also, they discussed the Strait of Hormuz, that the Strait of
Mm-hmm.
Hormuz should remain open. Was very also important for China because China is mainly a buyer of energy. And the
Yes.
situation of the Strait of Hormuz somehow is affecting Chinese economy. Not that much, but affects somehow. So
Mm-hmm.
they both said that Strait of Hormuz should remain open. So China, in Chinese version, she emphasized dialogue and encouraged the US and Iran to keep negotiating.
Yeah.
China's role was more of a mediator. China doesn't want this war to keep going on. China doesn't want Iran and America fighting.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, China wants peace.
I was gonna say, for this visit, I see a lot of different opinions online. Some are saying because for the past few years, the dominant narrative was China and U.S. are heading toward unavoidable confrontation. Everything felt so zero sum, and now, as we said, it's a very friendly meeting and the outcome was very positive. So a lot of people are saying that, okay, so China, US, are they? So what are the signals? Are they going to be, good friends again? But I think there's a saying I saw online is that China US relations, we cannot go back. There's no way that we could go back, but we could start over. So I think I really like that. And Chinese, from what I see here on Chinese social media, the public opinion on Trump and on US is actually, I would say, it's very weirdly complicated. because on one side politically, a lot of Chinese people obviously see Donald Trump as tough on China because of the tariffs, the trade wars, a lot of restrictions. But at the same time, a lot of Chinese people actually find Trump very entertaining, extremely entertaining, because he's just not like other politicians. And you were also saying that. He is, I would say, you could say he is a businessman. You could say he is a showman, but he has his own personalities, and social media love personalities. So even people who disagree with him politically sometimes still enjoy watching Trump a lot here in China. And I think something people outside China sometimes misunderstand here is China doesn't necessarily expect the US to suddenly become an ally at all. Because just like the saying, there's no way that we could go back to the old times, but we can always start over. Yeah, that's a really good point I see on the social media here.
Yes, actually, you have to understand something about the US. When you talk about the US, there is not one United States. There are many factions in the American politics. So there are some people in the United States that you can call globalists, liberal globalists. They want somehow to control the world. They want a new world order, liberal world order. Actually, if you are hearing that for the first time, it's not a theory of conspiracy. Actually, it is real. Yes. And those people that were more represented under Biden and even Obama somehow, even Bush, even his father, they were part of an American elite. I don't know if you have read that book, The Hand of History, from Francis Fukuyama. He predicts that the world will be one, liberal democracy had won, and those people, they follow the same mindset. However, Trump came into office, and Trump is more pragmatic. He's more traditional.
Yes.
He sees geopolitics in a more traditional way. Like, okay, America is not going to control the world is not going to be like America. Of course, many countries are like America, culture, music, those things are okay. However, politically, we're not going to be a big United States of America in the world. And America has its own sphere of influence. They say, no, the Western hemisphere is ours. He wants to take Canada, Greenland.
Yeah.
So he's a more
Mexico,
traditional. Yeah.
Venezuela.
Yeah. He was talking about making Venezuela the first state of America, if I'm not mistaken.
A lot of states.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's a more traditional leader. He sees geopolitics in a more realistic way. In international relations, we have two camps: liberals and realists. So Trump is this kind of person. But for China and for Russia, this is okay because they don't want to defeat the United States. First of all, it is impossible. If you want to defeat the United States, you have to bomb them with nuclear weapons, and they also have nuclear weapons. It will be mutual destruction. I don't think this is good for anyone. So I can see that Putin and Xi Jinping, they want an United States that we can talk to. They want to be partners with the United States. I can see that from Putin's point of view and from Xi Jinping's point of view. They want United States that they can negotiate, they can have conversation.
Of course.
They understand that the United States has its own sphere of influence. That's why, for example, when Trump interfered in Venezuela, of course, China was not happy. Russia also was not happy. They somehow support Maduro. They denounce this American aggression towards Venezuela, this kidnapping of Maduro. They didn't like that, but at the same time, they didn't interfere because Venezuela for them is under American influence. Understand? It is very far away. It is going to consume resources. Um, of course, in times of Soviet Union, supporting Cuba was hard for Soviet Union, you know. So they don't want to make the same mistakes. Okay, we have to focus on our backyard. Why I'm saying things like that? Because Russia and China, they want to keep talking to America. They don't want to fight America. They don't want to have. Of course, they can be rivals, but managing this rivalry, they don't want an enemy of the United States of America. And also, if you want America to be your enemy, or China or Russia, you are crazy, because who wants to be the enemy of a nuclear country?
Exactly.
So I think at the end of the day, diplomatically things are improving. I think it was very good. Those gestures, Trump is saying amazing things regarding China. He loved China, and to be honest, I think it was honest. I think it was a sincere, his sincere approach. He was not flattering. I think it was real. I think he really enjoyed going to China, and it's not hard. It's not hard to enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say you were saying how he enjoyed China. After returning to America, he kept posting photos from China. Like he's still inside his memory of China. He posted 15 posts, talking about the Great Hall of the People, talking about that America should do something like that for the White House. He wants to renovate the White House. Like, if China has that hall, why can't we have it? So it's it's viral here on Chinese social media. And literally just days after Trump's here. So Trump was here in China from the 13th to the 15th, and Putin came to Beijing at 19th. So literally just 4 days later, Putin arrives in Beijing and China. So you see the timing. And the atmosphere you felt here is very different, because a lot of people say online that when Putin was here, when Trump is here, it's louder. He likes being loud. And when Putin is here, it's much deeper, because you can tell that Putin's visit was very symbolic in a lot of ways. This year, I was talking about the timing. This year is actually the 30 years of the China-Russia strategic partnership, which is very important. And Putin was here, although he stayed, like 2 days from 19th to 20th, but he arrived late night, midnight of 19th. So basically he stayed for Beijing only about 1 day, but China and Russia signed around 40 documents and deals, so a lot of achievements. And this time was also Putin's 25th visit to China, which is, I would say, honestly, kind of incredible when you think about it, because 25 times visit. There's probably no other major world leader who has visited China that many times, I think. And also when he was meeting President Xi, he said the current Russia-China relations are at their best point in the entire 400-year of interaction between the two countries. So that's a pretty huge statement, I would say.
Yeah. Russia and China are presenting themselves as a stable, strategic bloc at the moment of global tension, especially after Trump's own visit to China. It means, look, we are getting close to Trump. That is fantastic. I think everyone liked it. The whole world likes that China and America are talking to each other. But at the same time, you have to understand that the basis of this new multipolar world was this alliance between Russia and China. It started long time ago, but why? We were talking about when Russia was very weak, like after the fall of Soviet Union. China was rising, Okay, China was not the giant that is today, but China was somehow rising. So when this strategic cooperation started, the world was very different. The world was unipolar. America could invade countries at will. Um, American Western, the G7, not just America, but the G7
Mm-hmm.
economies, they dictated uh, what was happening around the world in economic terms. Basically, the world was divided between America, Japan, Germany, France, England, Italy. Those countries, they completely control the economy of the world. The world has changed nowadays. The world has changed dramatically. And one of the reasons why the world has changed that much is because of this strategic alliance between China and Russia. But let's talk about the meeting. First, the political layer. Xi and Putin said China-Russia relations are at their highest level in history, as you mentioned. They reaffirmed their comprehensive strategic partnership. They
Mm-hmm.
signed a joint statement on strengthening strategic coordination and deepening good neighborly cooperation, as you mentioned. So, in a way, it was a diplomatic way of saying that they want a world less dominated by the United States and its allies. Of course, they want good relations with the United States, but at the same time, they want to say to the world, the era of a unipolar world is over. They don't want an hegemon dominate the world. They want cooperation. They want more stability. They 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 want less confrontation, less conflict around the world, less wars, less rivalry. They also said in their document that they both in their declarations that they are against fascism, they are against rivalry, they are against violations of international law. So somehow it was a very clear sign that the world is already multipolar. We are living in a multipolar world.
Yes.
And Xi Jinping and Putin, they were the drivers of this new multipolar world. That's why the global south, BRICS countries, the global south, the world in general, they have to understand that if nowadays, let's say India or Brazil or Mexico, they have a saying in the world is because China and Russia, they started it. So the world somehow must be thankful for those countries and their struggle for a multipolar world because they paid the price for that. China was very pressured, received a lot of sanctions from the United States. Of course, also Trump is putting sanctions because he wants to reindustrialize the United States, but we can talk about that later maybe. And at the same time, and Russia now is fighting a war in Ukraine, provoked by the West. It means that Russia and China, they paid a heavy price for the world to live in this multipolar world. As you mentioned, it means that Russia and Chinese relations are at all-time high. They are more pragmatic. Relations between China and Russia have been improving for the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, and you also can say that Putin and Xi Jinping, they like each other. You know, you see that
Of
they are
course.
comfortable when they talk to each other. They see themselves as, I could say, friends. It's something rare in international politics, international relations. Usually,
Mm-hmm.
countries they don't see each other as friends, but you could see when Putin and Xi Jinping are talking to each other, when they are with each other, they are at ease.
Yeah.
They are relaxed. It's
Yes.
not
I
tense.
actually wanna share some, details about I think not just friends, good friends, very good friends, or even families, because when you were saying there are a lot of signals. standing from their meeting. I was watching the Western media, and they were saying Putin has been sending signals when he arrived in Beijing, when he just get off the plane, because there's a small detail. He After he got off his plane and before he got into his car, he took off his jacket, and that's very simple, but they're saying that in Russian culture, it's a gesture that means someone feels comfortable, feels cozy, almost like being at home. So, which is fascinating. And Chinese social media immediately started, discussing it, talking about it. So this is a signal. Oh, Putin feels like, oh, I'm going home. I'm coming home. This is my family. I feel very comfortable being here. And also during his meeting with President Xi, he quoted a Chinese saying. He said, "One day apart feels like three autumns." That's a very famous Chinese old saying. It means in Chinese, 一日不见如隔三秋. It means I miss you so much. So Chinese social media loved it. And because whenever foreign leader use, Chinese expressions traditionally, naturally, and people feel very personal. It's like these two people, they're very close. And
Yes,
also
yes, yes.
another story, another, warm story here. Putin this time, when he was in China in a park in Beijing, he got reunion with a boy, like I mean, with a
Yeah.
middle-aged man who
And
was
he
a boy
studied in China,
26.
in Russia, yeah.
Yeah, 26 years ago when Putin visited China. So he met this boy in the park in Beijing, and they took a picture together. They hugged each other, and then this time he met this boy again. Now he is a middle-aged engineer, and this man said that brief encounter with Putin has shaped his entire life. So it's very warm encounters and very warm stories, but you can feel like the connection and the feeling between these two presidents. They're very close, very warm stories.
So as you know, Russia is a very cold country.
Yes.
So if they are always wearing jackets, we say kurtka in Russian. So
Kutka.
when you get home, you take off your kurtka. You take off kurtka. It is in the culture. So Russians, they understood it very well. I don't know if foreigners they could understand that.
I didn't know that before. I
Yeah,
first saw that on Western media, and I saw reporters and hosts, they were talking about it. I was like, he was just taking off a jacket. What about that? Like, is that a signal? What kind of signal is sending? And then they're saying that it's a Russian culture. It's like this
yeah.
man is feeling very comfortable at home. And then I think this culture, it travels back to Chinese social media. And then Chinese social media netizens are starting to talk about it and become trending and become viral.
Yeah,
Very good
yeah.
signal.
So it was a way of saying, look, I'm at home, I'm not working. And to be honest, I think it was the case. I don't think he was lying. You could feel in his body language that he was not working. He was kind of enjoying. When Putin goes to China, and Trump too, but when Putin goes to China, he feels at ease. He's not working. I think it's one of the few moments where he's relaxing. He's taking his time. Xi Jinping for him is a friend, so he enjoys going to
And I
China,
remember,
talking to Xi.
yeah, I remember last year, because last year I went to Russia, I went to Moscow for the Victory Day. I was reporting there, and I was watching the giant screen, live streaming. There were so many presidents from different countries arriving in Moscow, and Putin was meeting each of them one by one. And I have a Russian friend. He was watching the live streaming with me. And when President Xi was there meeting with Putin, he was like, Look at his face. I can tell because they see Putin every day on TV, right? They're Russians. Look at his face. He is sincerely happy now. He's really happy to see, Chinese president. They are very great friends. He
Yes.
looks different from before, meeting others. And he's really happy now.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah, I think they see each other as friends because, for example, I can say about Putin. Putin is the main leader of Russia, and he's the head of Russia basically. Putin is Russia for many Russians. He has no equal in Russia. When he goes to China, there are no flatteries, no obedience. He sees someone that talks to him in a friendly way, that you can be at ease, you can relax, you can even, I don't know, talk about different topics. I remember before those meetings, that meeting, they had a conversation about living 150 years old. So this kind of conversation, leaders don't have it. So it means they were talking about other types of topics. So I think they see each other as great friends. And also we are going to talk about their joint statement. As you can see, they both give statements. And I have with me both their declarations. And Xi Jinping said something very important. Xi Jinping said that he presented the meeting as proof that China-Russia relations are at a historic high. He emphasized that Putin's 25th visit to China shows the special nature of the relationship. He focused heavily, and talk about what Xi Jinping said. He focused heavily on political trust, what we're talking about right now. China and Russia, according to Xi, should support each other on core interests and act as strategic partners in a changing world. Because, as I mentioned, China and Russia, they complement each other. I think the relationship is so good because they don't compete basically in any area. Russia has natural resources, huge natural resources. China is the industry of the world. So somehow they complement each other.
yes.
She also said both sides signed a joint statement to strengthen their comprehensive strategic partnership, as we mentioned before. She also highlighted trade and development. He said bilateral trade has exceeded $200 billion
Right.
for 3 consecutive years. So just from January to April, it grew around 20%. Despite external pressure, despite sanctions and all of that. They want young Russians going to China and young Chinese going to Russia. On global affairs, she strongly criticized unilateralism. I mean, the unipolar world is over. Hegemony and attempts to revise the outcome of World War II. Basically, China and Russia, they see themselves as the winner of World War II. Russia, China, and even United States. So these countries, they should keep they should keep peace in the world as permanent members of the UN Security Council. They also should defend international justice and promote a fair global order. You have to understand that Xi Jinping and Putin, they don't want to destroy UN. They want to keep UN. They don't want to dismantle UN. UN is very important. We should follow international law.
Yeah.
Putin is a lawyer. So they don't want to even replace the UN. They just want UN to work. It must work, and it must be fair, and it must follow international law. This is what she said. But Putin said something similar. He also described Russia and China relations as unprecedented and very strong. And to be honest, it's unprecedented. If you look at history, they have never been that great. But he also stressed that the relationship is self-sufficient and does not depend on the current international situation. It's not because America is pressuring Russia and China that they are friends. No, it is. It doesn't depend on that. He also emphasized practical cooperation, according to Putin. Around 4 documents were signed. And also, Putin gave more concrete economic details. He said trade reached nearly 240 billion in 2025. And also, this is very important, nearly all Russia-Chinese trade is now conducted in rubles and yuan. What I said, what we can see nowadays, what we are witnessing, is that now yuan is rising. People are using yuan day by day. Even in Brazil and China, they trade in yuan. Nowadays, yuan is an international currency. We have dollars, we have euros, and we have yuan nowadays. It means indirectly that the world is passing through a stage of de-dollarization. He presented de-dollarization as a major achievement, saying both countries have created a stable trade system protected from external influence and global market instability.
More stable, yes.
Yes. And also, he highlighted Russia's role as a major energy supplier to China. As I mentioned, China and Russia, they complement each other. He said Russia is ready to keep supplying China reliably because, as you know, this conflict in Iran was somehow bad news for China. And also, he mentioned cooperation, education, culture, sport, media, the Russia-China Year of Education, the Russia-China Summer Games, and also they share a commitment to sovereign foreign policy, strategic cooperation, coordination, international law, BRICS, SCO, and the new development bank. So basically, it emphasizes this new world order that we are living in.
Yeah, I totally agree. But a lot of people, when they hear China-Russia partnership, they get afraid. They are scared of the concept China-Russia partnership. Oh, these two countries are getting very close because they often immediately think, oh, they are onto something. They are anti-West. But actually, like you said, this is much more complicated than that. Because from the Chinese perspective, and I think from the Russian perspective as well, the core idea is not just about building a bloc between these two countries. It's more about resisting a world dominated by only one center, only one center of power. That's why, like you said, there are concepts like multipolar world, BRICS and SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They keep appearing in these conversations. And also, when I talk to friends from the Global South, so from Global South perspective, also from Brazil, because I've talked to a reporter, a Brazilian reporter. A lot of people see this as countries trying to gain more room to make independent decisions, not necessarily choosing China over the West, or not necessarily choosing Russia over the West, but trying not to depend entirely on one side. So I think that's the point.
Yeah, I think they completely miss the mark. They miss the point. The point is that when China and Russia, they talk to each other, when they mention multipolar world, they don't mention anti-West world.
No.
That's why, for example, as I mentioned before, they don't want to pick a fight with America.
No.
They just say no, but at the same time they say, oh, your time of reigning supreme is over. Okay, you're not going to impose your liberal Western views on us. It is over. The era of hegemon is over. They always emphasize that no more hegemon, unilateralism. We have to respect international law. They want more
Everybody should have a
international law.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, they want more international law. You can
Yes.
always, when you read their documents, they always mention that no, we want more international law, we want more participation of other countries, we want other voices being heard. Of course, they don't want nuclear proliferation because it would cause chaos, but they are very clear. We want more cooperation, more discussion, more peace. I think peace is a word that people don't like nowadays, but it's basically what they want. They
Yes.
don't want confrontation. I think they want to, of course, we live in a world where always there will be some rivalries and things like that, but they want controlled, manageable rivalries and confrontation in a very manageable way, respecting international law and multipolarity.
Yeah. Putin and President Xi, they also talk about the Iran situation. Of course, it's a very serious topic here right now. And what's interesting is that China and Russia seem relatively aligned on this issue, which is a good thing, but not necessarily in every detail. I mean, but like in the broader idea that this escalation should be avoided. And external military intervention could make the region even more unstable. So they thought we are on the same page, and people do care about Iran situation a lot.
Mhm.
I think this is
Yes,
where global anxiety becomes very real this time.
yes, Iran was both in Trump's Xi Jinping
Yes,
meeting
yes,
and
yes.
Putin and Xi Jinping meeting.
Mhm.
Iran, the Iranian topic was there. Regarding Trump, as I said, Trump, he wanted some concessions from Xi Jinping and some support from Xi Jinping because this it was completely different. What happened in Iran was completely different from what happened in Venezuela. We cannot forget that when America kidnapped Maduro, it was somehow successful. He kidnapped Maduro, and Venezuelan government nowadays, they didn't change the government, but the government is way more friendly towards the US. They cooperate more. Okay? So it was very successful. They thought the same regarding Iran. They said, whoa, if you could change the approach of Venezuela towards us, we can do the same with Iran. Instead of kidnapping the leader of Iran, Khamenei, the Ayatollah Khamenei,
Mhm.
they decided to kill him. But the effect was completely the opposite. The opposite. Unfortunately, Iran didn't back down. Unfortunately
No.
for the US, and now the United States is in a quagmire. It is involved in this horrible war, aggression towards Iran, and you cannot defeat Iran like this because we are talking about a country of 8 million people, mountainous, very experienced. I mean, we are talking about Iran. Iran and China are both very old civilizations. They are very old and very
Iran has
traditional.
over 5,000 years of
Yeah,
civilization. There has to be a reason behind it. It's they exist that long for a reason. It's not easy, to get knocked down.
yeah. But we can talk about that when you discuss history, because, for example,
Yeah.
I am a person that loves history. I always love history, and there is a reason behind that. That one day we could discuss this topic. That is very interesting. Um, but Iran, from my perspective, from my point of view, is the most important country in that region because it's
Mhm.
Turkey and Iran. They have big populations, big demography. However, if you compare Iran to Turkey, Iran has what Turkey doesn't have in abundance, that is energy. Iran has oil, gas, huge reserves of oil and gas. So Iran basically is, we could say, the most important country in that region. And also Iran is a pillar of this multipolar world. Basically, the countries that fight more for this multipolar world are China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Those countries are the pillar of this new world order. New world order. So uh, Trump started this aggression towards Iran because they wanted to change the government of Iran. They wanted to make a regime change, and it didn't happen. So, what are the options? Keep bombing Iran, invade Iran. I mean, come on. If they invade Iran, the country go bankrupt. Of course, we are talking about the most powerful military in the world, the biggest economy in the world. Of course, I think at the end of the day, if there is a real war between the United States and Iran, probably the United States will win. But at what cost? I mean, they will win, but they will be completely bankrupt. The country will be destroyed economically. And
it's a very, asymmetric warfare. And Iran, their arsenal is huge, and they're using drones. I think that's very smart. You can't beat it. They're using so many drones, cheap drones, and you have to, the defensive missiles cost millions. So you compare the price.
Perfect what you said. Perfect. Exactly. The equation is horrible for America because, okay, Iran can send a $10,000 drone to American bases. I'm talking about American bases.
Yeah.
Or the aircraft carriers. And what America can do, like shooting them down with a missile that costs millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Drones, they change completely the battlefield. Completely. You can ask the Russians and the Ukrainians about that.
Suicide drones.
Yeah, it is. War has changed dramatically. So people nowadays, they have to rethink their way of waging wars thanks to drones. Yeah, it means for America, the situation is very, very tense, very complicated. This is one of the reasons why they went to China, because they want China to mediate, basically. Trump wants Chinese mediations. Of course, on social media, he says, we are destroying Iran, we are defeating Iran. But then at the end of the day, they cannot do much.
They can't. No.
They cannot do much towards Iran. It's impossible. It's done. Iran is very friendly towards Russia, towards China. Also, their relationship have never been that good. Unfortunately, in history, I could say Russian-Iranian past hasn't been that great. They fought many wars against each other. But nowadays, the relationship between those countries, great, excellent. I could see from Putin's point of view that he really respects the Iranians. He really respects the Ayatollah, the former one and the new one. And Iran falling, it means the Middle East will be completely dominated by the US. Because, with all due respect to those countries, but Saudi Arabia, Israel, the Gulf countries, they all are very aligned with the US. Some countries, they host American bases. Turkey is part of NATO. So the Middle East nowadays is an American-led region. The new Syrian government, last week, they were conducting military exercises with NATO. So Iran is the only country in the region that is not like that. That's the only country in the region that really supports a multipolar world. So Iran cannot fall. If Iran falls, that very important reaching energy region will be completely dominated by America. Completely. So They
And
don't
I
want
think
that.
that's why, people care about Iran a lot
Yeah.
because not only geopolitics, it's affecting ordinary people's life. They're not only
Mhm.
thinking about, okay, what's happening politically, but people worry about oil prices. And like you said, if Iran fall, a lot of things will be completely different. Regional instability, it could become a wider war. And straight up Hormuz, of course, and the world is becoming more unpredictable overall, with external pressure, taking over. It's completely
Yeah,
different
the
picture.
world needs oil for
Yeah.
basically everything. So when the price of oil is increasing, the whole world will suffer the
Yes.
consequences. So economically, also imagine if Iran falls, some terrorist groups will gain more ground, will be more powerful somehow. Iran was one of the main fighters against ISIS. Iran falling will be a disaster for the region and somehow for the world.
So, okay, then I feel like we covered approximately 3% of everything happened in the world right now,
I could give it
and so
more.
many different topics. Even more?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give it a 5% because there are so many good things going on. We have to leave some room for our further episodes. But it's great that every topic seems to connect to another topic. So you see, we started with Trump in China and then Putin in China, and then 5 minutes later we were talking about multipolar world. We were talking about BRICS, oil prices, Iran. Yeah, so much. I think that's probably what this podcast, what this channel is going to become. Just
Definitely.
us trying to understand the world in real time.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say one last time, thank you so much. Finally, this is happening. I'm so happy. And to our viewers, if you enjoy this episode, please do follow our channel because right now you are early and later you can pretend you discovered us before we became famous. That's very important.
Yeah. So guys, please also don't forget to subscribe, put the like button, okay?
Yep.
Follow us on
Yep.
social media. We'll always be here giving you analysis and insights
Yeah. I
towards
think
this
next
new.
episode we can talk about Iran. What do you think?
Yeah,
Or
could be.
leave your comments below so that we know what would you want to hear most and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, let's see what's
So,
happening in the world. The world is full of surprises.
yeah,
Tomorrow, maybe something very important will happen, and we are always going to discuss about recent events.
exactly. So thank you so much, everyone. This is Power and Perspective. I'll see you in the next episode.